Today's video lesson will be covering the in-class practice problems from Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. For number 1 here, we have 5 times the square root of 72 x to the 4th. When simplifying square roots with variables, we first start out by doing exactly what we've been doing and taking the prime factorization of the number underneath our square root or radical. So 72 breaks down into 9 times 8. 9 breaks down into 3 times 3. 8 breaks down into 4 times 2. 4 breaks down into 2 times 2. Now we have a pair of 2's there, along with a pair of 3's. So this means I have 3 times 2 out in front from the groups, along with multiplying with the 5 that's already out there. Now what do I do with this x to the 4th? Well, x to the 4th is equal to x times itself 4 times. So I have 1 pair and 2 pair. The number of pairs you have are the number of x's that get moved out in front of your square root. So I have 2 groups of x's, or 2 pairs of x's, so that means I have x squared out in front. Now, what's left underneath my square root? Well, I don't have any remaining x's, but I do have a 2 left over all by itself that doesn't have a friend or a buddy. So I have the square root of 2 there. Now all I need to do is clean this up. So 3 times 2 is going to be 6. 6 times 5, that is going to be 30. So our final answer for number 1 here is 30x squared times the square root of 2. Number 2, we had 4 times x times y squared times the square root of 135 x to the 7th, y to the 6th. 135, well, that breaks down into 5 times 27. 27 becomes 9 times 3. 9 becomes 3 times 3. So I have a pair of 3's there, but a 3 and a 5 that don't have a partner. So the 3 times 5 are going to get multiplied underneath my square root. So I'm going to have first, sorry about that, 3 times 4 out in front. So that's going to be 3 times 4 there, times x times y squared times the square root of 15. Now, x to the 7th, x times itself 7 times. So we just pair it off. 1, 2, 3 different pairs with 1 remaining. So since I have 3 pairs, I multiply x to the 1st, that's already out there from the start of the problem, times x to the 3rd, which we got from 1, 2, 3 different groups of x's. And that remaining x, well, that unfortunately doesn't have a buddy, a partner, or a friend, so it stays underneath our square root. Next, we take a look at our y's. Y to the 6th. Now, instead of writing out y times itself 6 times, the shortcut we can use is, since we're taking the square root of something, since we are looking for the number of pairs, we can divide our exponent by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. So you end up with y to the 3rd. And since there are no remainders in our exponents, there's nothing else that stays underneath our square root. So our final answer, once we clean everything up here, is going to be 3 times 4. Nice and easy, that's 12. X to the 1st times x to the 3rd becomes x to the 4th. Let me just clean that up. We get x to the 4th there. And then y to the 2nd times y to the 3rd becomes y to the 5th times 15 x. Moving on now to number 3. We have the square root of 90, x to the third, y to the sixth. 90 gets broken down into 9 times 10. 9 is 3 times 3. We have a perfect square there. 10, however, is 2 times 5. So 2 and 5 don't have a partner, don't have a buddy. So that 10, 2 times 5, is staying underneath my square root. So here, I'm moving the 3 out in front, and I'm leaving the 10 underneath my square root there. Next, I go to x to the third. Well, x to the third, we can divide our exponent by 2. So 2 goes into 3 one time, and it has a remainder of 1. So that means I'm moving 1x out in front and leaving 1x underneath. So it's the same thing as saying x times x times x. I have one pair that is going underneath, or 1x that's going underneath my square root, and the pair means I'm moving 1x out in front of my square root. Next, we do the same thing for our y's. Y to the sixth means I have y to the sixth divided by 2, and that just becomes y to the third. There. So we have 3x y to the third times the square root of 10x for our final answer. And now, last but not least, number 4. We have 3 times 30, x to the 8th, y to the 9th. So 30, it's going to break down into 2 and 15. 15 is 3 and 5. However, there are no repeating numbers. There's no pair of numbers. Every number appears exactly once. So 2 times 3 times 5 is what gives us 30. And since there are no pairs, we can't move anything out in front to multiply with the 3 that's already there. So we're going to have 3 times the square root of 30. Next, we take a look at our variables. X to the 8th, we're taking the square root of x to the 8th. That means I am dividing x to the 8th divided by 2. And that means I'm ending up with x to the 4th. There are no remainders. There are no leftover variables. So I have 3 times x to the 4th out in front here. Next, I take a look at the square root of y to the 9th. This means I'm taking y to the 9th, and I am dividing 9 by 2. 2 goes into 9 times 4 times, and we have a remainder of 1. So 9 divided by 2 becomes 4 with a remainder of 1. So that means we end up with y to the 4th out in front times 1y left underneath our square root.